Hi all, it's Ashley. The first gear review video is now up for the MSR Pocket Rocket 1 versus the Pocket Rocket 2 ultralight backpacking stove. All right, this is the MSR ultralight backpacking stove. This is the Gen 1. Unfortunately, it is no longer available for retail purchase, but the Gen 2 is, the Pocket Rocket 2 is. So we're gonna go ahead and go over the review of the Gen 1 and then talk about the design changes that have happened between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2 in this review. So let's start off with the fit first on this backpacking stove. This is an ultralight backpacking stove that uses canisters as the fuel source. So before we go any farther, we should probably talk through what those fuel sources are. So I typically use an isopropane or isobutane blended gas that comes in a canister like this. This is a gas canister that weighs about 8 ounces and will get you about 60 minutes of burn time. So if you're just boiling water to add to dehydrated food, it should last you pretty long on a decent backpacking trek. And you can get a lot of life out of just an 8-ounce canister, especially on a weekend trip or something. And this fuel canister connects to your backpacking stove by connecting to the threading that's on top of the fuel canister. All right, so let's get back to the stove now that we understand the fuel source. So the backpacking stove comes in this really cool hard shell carrying case. It's really great for keeping out debris and making sure your stove stays clean as well as dry before usage. So let's go ahead and take it out of the carrying case and take a look at it. And as you can see, it's really tiny. I mean, there's not much to it. It's super small, super lightweight. It's about 3 ounces in weight and about 4 inches in height and 2 inches in length and 2 inches in width. And with the hard shell carrying case, that equates to about 4 ounces worth of weight. So really great light, ultralight backpacking option. All right, so let's go over the design changes between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. The Gen 2 is only 2.6 ounces. Its height is only 3.1 inches. Its width is only 1.7 and its length is only 1.3 inches. So you can tell that's a significant dimension and weight change between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 on an already very small and ultralight backpacking stove. All right, so now that we've already went over the dimension and weight specs of the stove, let's go ahead and attach it to the fuel source canister just to see how it operates. All right, so let's take our fuel source here. We're gonna pop the plastic top off. I usually keep these handy just because they're nice to have on the trail and making sure that you keep your canister nice and clean here, because you don't want the threads getting all gunky or gross, because it makes it difficult to connect the stove and could cause you to lose much needed gas here. So all you have to do is just take the threads of the stove and attach it directly to the fuel source canister. So you just line up the lines here, and then you just start screwing it on. And make sure you've got connection between the screws. You don't want to end up stripping the screw head at the bottom of this. And then once you hear that gas, you'll know that you're connected, but keep going because you want to have a super tight fit between the fuel canister and the actual stove. All right, I usually go to that point and then we're done and we are now all connected. All right, so let's go over the parts that make up this stove. This is stamped metal that this stove is made out of. And starting at the base here, you have the adapter that hooks to the fuel source. And then you have the overall gas valve here. It's a little clip that actually jets out off of the stove. And this helps you control the temperature of the flame that you're putting on the pot that sits on top here. Going up, you have the fuel line that goes all the way up to the burner head, and then you have the pot supports that actually come out and expand away from the burner head that it'll sit on. And then this is the burner head portion here, and then there's also this really cool wind clip that's on top that breaks the burner up into 3 different sections. So it just makes sure to, in case you have a lot of wind going on, it helps keep the burner from blowing out because of significant winds wherever you're at hiking. All right, so let's talk about the design changes between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. So starting at the base, on the Gen 1, we have more of a cylindrical base. On the Gen 2, you're gonna actually see more of a rectangular shape. So there's a significant design change there on the overall shape of the base. And the flame adjuster has also changed in its storage position. It now fits underneath and around the rectangular base shape versus being right on the side here, and storage is up versus down. Also, a significant design change on the pot holders is the pot holders no longer expand and retract as they do on the Gen 1. They now twist and fold down around the base of the actual stove itself. So going over the functionality changes between the Gen 1 and Gen 2, I think one of the biggest significant changes around the pot holders. So with the pot holders that can twist and fold down, they're actually able to expand a little bit farther when they're in use, which means they're able to hold greater sizes of pots and vessels that you're trying to cook on top of the stove. So just to show you with the Gen 1, I typically use just a solo pot when I'm out on the trails, and I use the GSI Soloist pot here. So I'm just gonna put it on top so you can see what it looks like with just a single size pot on it. So fits perfectly for a soloist. If you're dualist, or if you have multiple people with you that are using only one stove, you might want to upgrade to the Gen 2 just because you'll have a greater expanse of the pot holder for a larger pot or vessel for your group. All right, so now that we're fully assembled, I think we're ready to go ahead and turn on this stove and see how it does. So just for demonstration purposes, I'm gonna take the pot back off the stove, and then we're gonna go ahead and demonstrate how we light this thing. So we've already attached everything. We made sure the base is super secure, and we heard the gas line come through too. So that's a good indicator that it is ready, it's primed and ready to use. So all you have to do is just take the valve and turn it to the left, and you should hear the gas start to flow. If you're not hearing it, your gas line might be clogged, so definitely check for that. But I can definitely hear it, so we're gonna go ahead and light it. Boom, so easy. And you can see all 3 sections of the burner head are already going, no issues there. You should see a slight flame coming off of this. And I'm gonna go ahead and take it up to full temperature for you, just so you can see what it looks like. Wow, right? Yeah, this thing burns. You shouldn't have any problems with this in the backcountry getting your water to boil quickly. So I'm gonna turn it down just because we are, in a garage. And then I'm gonna put the pot back on top here. And boom, you're ready to go for dinner or lunch or breakfast or whatever you're making out on the trail. One thing I think is really important to bring up with this stove is that in inclement weather conditions, especially if it's windy, this stove still does have some issues with performance. Even with the 3-section wind clip on it, it still struggles a bit to hold a flame if you're in gustier types of winds. So that's just something to keep in mind with this stove, is that you will need to probably build like some sort of rock barrier or other barrier around this, just to keep the heat in and on the pot so it doesn't take forever to warm up your water. So just keep that in mind, that it's not the best wind proofing or wind resistance with this type of model. And how it compares to the Gen 2, design change wise, there really isn't a difference between the burner head on the Gen 1 to the Gen 2. It's pretty much the same design. So between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2, you're going to see the same performance in windier or gustier conditions. If it's calm conditions, you should be just fine between the Gen 1 and the Gen 2. And then going over the boiling point of this stove, you should be able to get a full pot of water on this stove all the way cranked up in about 3 minutes or less in calm, optimal conditions. As it relates to the Gen 2, the performance on the overall boiling time hasn't really advanced at all either. It's still about 3 to 3.5 minutes to get 16 ounces of water to a full boil with both designs. One thing I did want to note with this stove as well is that it has a really exceptional simmer point with this control valve. You can get this flame to go all the way down to just a slight simmer, all the way up to a full rolling, boiling water situation. So it's got really great variability between the simmer features and also the boiling features. So if you are cooking something that's a little bit more delicate on the trail, you won't run into that issue of where you're over boiling or burning something. You're able to control that temperature so well, you should be just fine. And then I think, as with most stoves, you definitely have to keep them clean and keep them dry. I definitely had a situation where this stove got wet on the trail and was pretty much unusable until it dried out. So definitely, like I said, make sure you're using the carrying case to keep it dry and keep debris out so that it's properly functioning for you when you need it on the trail. All right, so let's go over the fit, form, and functionality of this backpacking stove. On our overall quality score, I would give this about a 27 out of 30. This item typically retails for about $45 MSRP, and similar products of similar quality on the market average about 43. So there is a slight markup on this particular product itself. And if we adjust for that on the overall product value scale, I would give this close to about an 88 out of 100. Which means that the overall quality versus the pricing of it is close, but not quite on par. So it's still a good value, but I would say that it's a little bit overpriced than probably where it should be for the overall functionality and value that you're getting out of it. I still love this backpacking stove. I use this on almost every trip I go on still. So I wouldn't say it's like a no buy, but at the same time, like it's definitely got some disadvantages to it because it is an ultralight backpacking stove. So just keep that in mind. All right, that's my review of the MSR Pocket Rocket 1 as it relates to the Pocket Rocket 2. If you're interested in checking out either the Gen 1 or the Gen 2, I'll be sure to leave a link below to both stoves for you. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop me a comment below and I'll be sure to get back to you. And if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and smash that thumbs up button for me. And thanks so much for helping me grow this channel. Be sure to check back for any new gear and apparel reviews that I'll also be posting to this channel out of my collection that I own. Other than that, happy adventuring and we'll see you next time.